there comes a point where you can no longer just decide to let this fester, because they will have a nuclear weapon. Again, a situation that is 100% intolerable. So I believe that the Israelis will either take it out, or it's possible it could be a combined raid. One of the things the Israelis did when they conducted their previous strikes in Iran was to clear a path through the air defense systems that guard that approach to Iran. So they've got a way to get in. They need to do it before Iran replaces all of those. And I think that's part of why the clock is ticking.
Georgetown University fellow with ties to Hamas has been arrested, thanks in large part to great investigative work by the Middle East Forum. Badr Khan Suri, who openly praised Hamas terror and who has family connections to the terror group's leadership, was arrested by ICE and now faces deportation. Good riddance. While Georgetown stayed silent, the Trump administration took action. Joining us now to break it down is Jim Hanson, president of World Strat and chief editor at the Middle East Forum. He's also a U.S. Army Special Forces veteran and a leading voice on national security and foreign policy. Jim, always great to see you. And hey, this was big. Tell us more about the Middle East Forum's great work in getting this terror supporter, God willing, out of the country and out of Georgetown.
Yeah, I'd like to credit Anna Stanley, the researcher who found this information. She's working on a larger piece about all the bad things that are going on at Georgetown. There is a large center there funded by Al-Walid, who is a Saudi royal. And it's a Muslim and Christian understanding center. Except the understanding is they want to drag down Christians and pretend Muslims have done nothing wrong ever. So it's a bad place. While investigating that, she found this Suri who has basically said some heinous things. And I think the Trump administration has now decided to enforce the rules that say if you are a foreign visitor to this country, you can't come here and cheerlead for terror. So they're giving him the boot.
This isn't the first instance. Look, the Middle East Forum has exposed a bunch of this radical activity in academia and beyond.
Yeah, I think the Middle Eastern studies programs of far too many of our major so-called elite universities are captured by Islamists who are pushing forth a false narrative, an anti-Israel narrative, and one that supports the idea that not the Islamist terror groups are really not all that bad. And so we've been pushing back against that. I think since the Trump administration came in, we've had a couple other big wins. We put in a report about $122 million of financing from USAID that went to terror-affiliated groups. And that was part of the demise of that organization. And we also, the South African ambassador, who also has Islamist ties and also was saying some pretty heinous things about President Trump, we broke a story about that, and he is now persona non grata. So we're having a lot of fun. It's nice to have people who listen when we tell them the bad things are happening.
Well, Jim, I think that's the key. And by the way, Secretary of State Marco Rubio released a very strong statement about that South African ambassador who you mentioned, but the difference in leadership, I think, is obviously astounding. Things are getting done, and President Trump has proven to be a man of his word. Talk about the effect that has. Radicalism on campus, it's not confined to campus, right? There are ripple effects, very dangerous ripple effects throughout American society, potentially.
100%. And I think we've found a direct tie between the overall leftist revolutionary movements, the woke agenda, those ideologies, the funding behind it, the Soros money, the Tides Foundation money, that's all going in to fund all of this, was funding the Hamas mobs as well. So when the Hamas, people were intimidating Jewish students when they were tearing things up, all of this is really a large attempt to destroy this country and Western civilization overall. I think there is a globalist agenda that is pushing that, and we're seeing the effects in a major way in the United States. And fortunately now we're seeing a reaction and action against it by this administration, and that's going to make it much more difficult for these people to operate.
It's a new day. And Jim, it really is an unholy alliance, by the way, which you just mentioned, between the radical left and radical Islamists. And we see that very plainly, I think, in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia University graduate student, here as a guest on a student visa, on a green card. He's now on the road to being deported too. He led pro-Hamas mobs and protests at Columbia University. And yet the left has taken his back. They very forcefully, including Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, top members of the Senate and Democrat Party, they have very forcefully backed Mahmoud Khalil. What does that say about the state of the left right now?
Yeah, I think there's an element of the left that is 100% anti-Trump. And so they're reflexively against anything he is for, even if that means they're against deporting criminal gang members or supporting the idea that terrorists should be allowed to incite violence on our campuses. So the thing they've tried to do with Khalil is pretend this is a free speech issue. And they're trying this with Suri, the new guy, too. It's not about free speech. If you are on a visa or a green card and you are not a citizen, you do not have full First Amendment rights. The Immigration Naturalization Act prohibits you from inciting violence, supporting groups that preach violence, and these people are doing that. So they should be removed, and I think that's going to come out when these court cases play out.
Overnight, Hamas fired 3 rockets at Tel Aviv. They continue to hold 24 hostages, including an American citizen, and they refuse to negotiate. As a former U.S. Army Special Forces veteran, what do you think Israel's, and they're going back in on the ground now, of course, Israel, what should Israel's military response be to this Hamas madness and evil?
Total destruction. I don't think there's any other option left. You know, they've invented this idea that there was a Gaza genocide. And I just like to remind people, when the United States military was operating in urban conditions in Iraq, we had 10 times more civilian casualties per enemy combatant killed than the IDF has had in Israel. So the idea that they're operating just killing everyone is absurd. I think they need to up their operations tempo because this is really the last chance. It's gone on too long. They need to finish Hamas, move them out of the areas that are going to be rebuilt, and then occupy them. It's likely to be a military occupation, and have some of the Gulf Arab countries and others bring in money first and then peacekeepers later to help try to rebuild a culture and society for the Gazans and Palestinians that's not based on hatred of the Jews.
Speaking of Hamas, we've got another Iranian proxy stirring things up. The Houthis in Yemen. President Trump taking strong action against the Houthis this week, and the Houthis still launching a ballistic missile at central Israel overnight. Do you think the Houthis, though, Jim, are not very long for this world, perhaps? Now that President Trump, there's a new sheriff in town, he's in office?
Yeah, I think the idea that a bunch of two-bit terrorists like them could shut down a global shipping lane was intolerable all along. And some people say, okay, that's not our business, but the U.S. economy is a global enterprise. We buy and sell and bring in raw materials from all around the world. So we can't allow that to happen. That's one of the main functions of the U.S. Navy is keeping freedom of navigation. And so I think President Trump is going to ensure that. He also was very clear that he does not consider the Houthis to be a one-off. They are a proxy of Iran. The spider at the center of the web is Iran, and they need to be dealt with, and they need to stop pushing Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the rest out and causing trouble in that entire region.
Yeah, Jim, the head of the snake resides in Tehran, of course. But look, it seems like a year of reckoning for Hamas, as you just mentioned. They're on the road, I think, to being crushed. The Houthis as well. And Iran's nuclear weapons program. We're now learning that President Trump, we know that he sent this letter to the supreme leader of Iran recently. Essentially, we're learning, giving the Ayatollah a 2-month deadline to abandon his nuclear program or else. Do you think this is the year where it's do or die, so to speak, when it comes to that Iranian nuclear program? Talk about something dragging on too long, this Iranian nuclear crisis. It seems that this is the time to deal with it decisively.
I agree, and it has been all along. However, there comes a point where you can no longer just decide to let this fester, because they will have a nuclear weapon. Again, a situation that is 100% intolerable. So I believe that the Israelis will either take it out, or it's possible it could be a combined raid. One of the things the Israelis did when they conducted their previous strikes in Iran was to clear a path through the air defense systems that guard that approach to Iran. So they've got a way to get in. They need to do it before Iran replaces all of those. And I think that's part of why the clock is ticking.
Yeah, key point. Jim, about a minute left. How does that change the region? And it's rapidly changing as we speak. The Abraham Accords are back on the table, of course. But how does it change the region if Iran's nuclear program is eliminated, whether diplomatically, militarily? Could we see a real possibility of regime change in Tehran?
Ideally, the Islamic Republic, since it's well past its expiration date, the people of Iran would decide they deserve better government. It would have to come from within, and that would be the best possible situation. I think, unfortunately, if it goes to the point where their nuclear program gets taken out, for the short term, that's going to make the region more chaotic because they will strike out and lash back. But in the end, that's a path to peace. So either one of those, I'm fine with. I had no nukes for Iran or no mullahs running Iran. Either one of those solutions works for everybody.
Amen. Jim, great points all around as always, folks. He's the president of WorldStrat, chief editor at the Middle East Forum. You can follow him on X, across social media. Jim, great work on exposing the bad guys. Keep it up, my friend. God bless. We'll see you again soon. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.